Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey folks, I'm Jack Murphy here with Dave Park. You will see him over there or on the wide shot. He looks a little lonely today because things are different. Dimitri had some car problems, so I am back in the production chair after like 2-3 years since I've done this last. So apologies if there's any technical issues. Our guest tonight is Deviant Ollam. Deviant has a background in pentesting, red teaming, and physical security. A few years ago, Dave and I took a class of his at DEF CON where he taught key impressioning. He had a whole class about cracking safes. And he also has a lot of information, interesting details about the history of intelligence services cracking into safes and how they went about that. So we're going to talk about all this stuff tonight. Mr. Deviant, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. This is exciting. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. For viewers who might not know, because this is exciting stuff, like this is movie stuff, and for people who might not know what pen testing is or physical pen testing, like you are, you're the analog Barbie in a digital world, right? But you're the guy on the ground. Can you tell us what pen testing and red teaming is, and particularly in your world?
Sure thing. So perhaps the boardroom technical language that we sanitize things with, we say it's adversarial emulation. Or if you want to sound cool, just at a cocktail party with your friends, my wife just says I'm professionally dangerous. The movie style reference that you make, if some of the folk in the audience are old enough to remember a film in the early 90s, Robert Redford, Dan Aykroyd, David Strathairn, and others, Sidney Poitier, Lake River Phoenix. It was called Sneakers. Mm-hmm. That's one of the best illustrations. In fact, I know the technical advisor on that film, who's in the trades, right? That is what we do. We break into places so that people can find out how secure their place is. We pick the locks, we bypass the alarms, we mess with all the access control systems. Sometimes I'm cracking safes. And the customer gets to find out, could a bad guy with a given sort of threat profile get in, get out, possibly do so unnoticed, and then we can help advise them or their colleagues and their contacts of what mitigation steps they might want to take to change how robust their security is.
Now, is it always Mission Impossible coming down from the skylight, or do sometimes, and I'm asking because I know, because I've seen your videos, and if you guys have not checked out any of his videos on YouTube, you owe it to yourself. They're all fascinating. But sometimes is it as easy as picking up a clipboard?
Yeah, I mean, it is. You like to fantasize and say that we're all wearing the black, and you have the tactical rope gear, and you're climbing. But yeah, sometimes it's one step above. Knock, knock, knock. Password inspector. Sometimes you just show up. When you think about, though, I actually think that's not a bad thing. I think it's representative of how trusting and safe much of our world is. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have a high threat that they live under. A lot of people, if somebody shows up and they have to say the affiliate clipboard, they've got some paperwork from the local municipality, and they say, hey, we're doing meter readings today. Who's your facilities director? Oh, he's out at lunch? Well, yeah, he usually just gives me a key. A lot of people working at a front desk, if nothing gets their hackles up, that makes sense to me. This person doesn't seem like they're behaving like a threat. The water meters are back there in the utility closet. Do you need to show you the way? That's how a lot of things just get done in our world. And if you've ever, for example, had a hotel and maybe the room wasn't under your name, you're staying with a colleague or a spouse, and you say, oh, I left something in the room. Most hotels shouldn't give you a key without verifying your name's not on the room. But there's plenty of places out there where if you're not behaving squirrely and you can say, who was at the desk earlier? It was a blonde girl, right? It was Judy. Yeah, she was checking us. Like, well, Judy, you were here. You don't look like you're a meth head about to steal the television. Yeah, what room did you need again? Boom. Our world has a lot of places where we reduce friction by doing a quick mental calculus and saying, yeah, that this person, kind of that Gavin de Becker gift of fear. The hairs in your neck aren't rising. So much of what we do is, as you described, just look like we belong there, have a cover story that's plausible, and that'll do it. Sometimes you don't have to break out the special high-tech tools.
Yeah. So let's roll back and start from the beginning. We always like to ask our guests their origin story. Like, how did you get your superpowers, Ollum, Deviant? So you're in a very unique world, and this isn't, usually we think of people who are in this world either got there by way of being with the government or against it, right? Either, a criminal or some sort of, B&E section of law enforcement or intelligence or whatever. How did you grow up and what led you into this?
Yeah, the tongue-in-cheek answer that we like to sometimes say is that I had some of the right friends and some of the wrong friends. And the more broad answer is that I had a healthy curiosity about the world around me. I didn't take a lot of things at face value. I was raised to question a lot of things by my loving and kind parents. And when you have that kind of mental disposition, and you're fortunate enough to grow up in an environment where I don't know if kids today could grow up the way I did. People our age, your age, my age, like we snuck around. We got into places
Yep.
we shouldn't have been.
Yep.
And there weren't just people ready to call the cops the instant they saw a teenager, in that, why is he on that side of that fence? We were allowed to kind of explore, and it was lower stakes.
Yeah,
And
it was.
doing so, you kind of learned how you could get in and out of abandoned buildings and things like that. And having that knowledge, it never really left me. It never went away. It was always in the back of my mind. If I was staying at a hotel as a teenager or, in my 20s, I was always trying to, which doors go to the back of house? Which go to the maintenance spaces? I went, there's pipes, there's a generator. This is, I'm not supposed to be here. And then you get a little bit older and you're staying in hotels or visiting big buildings. You say, I wonder if I can get on the roof. I wonder if I can get into, something that's more critical infrastructure. And you start to realize that a lot of the systems that control our world, especially access control systems, rely on things like doors that swing shut and click properly, and they often don't. Or you rely on things like, no one would want to go back there because, why would you ever do, there's no sign on the door saying it's valuable. Who would ever check that door? And you start being the person who checks all the doors. And then eventually you say, wow, I can get in a lot of places that our world thinks you can't get into. I wonder if I could ever do anything with this. And I'm fortunate enough that I actually got to. It's not an easy career to find yourself in. It's what a lot of people turn to us for, kind of official training, which nowadays training is two things. A lot of people like to say training and certifications, what's the value in that? And it's twofold. One is learning skills, but also just kind of getting that official blessing that says, I'm not just some chump. I'm not just somebody who's a criminal. I've actually tried to better myself. I've done some of this professionally. If you want to become a bouncer, maybe you're a guy who's just good at fist fighting, but maybe if you actually went to a training course, they say, all right, the training doesn't just mean anybody can hit somebody. You actually can keep your head about you. You can do things with best practices. You understand the professional way to go about what otherwise would be a very blunt sort of trade. And that's why, people come to us all the time at Red Team Alliance because they say, I want to do what you do, but I want to do it properly. And a lot of people have the knack, or at least the desire to get in places they shouldn't be. But can you do it in a way that is respectful and responsible and adds value to the clients who are paying you to do it? That's what differentiates from the street criminal.
And it's interesting too because, like I said, you are analog in a digital world in the sense of you're a hacker. You're a feature at DEF CON and at all the different hacking conventions, and your path was. It seems to me that it was probably very parallel to a lot of how the OG hackers grew up, where they were doing things that, were probably just because there weren't, you didn't have training facilities, you didn't have Hack the Box, you didn't have these things. People just learned it by doing it. And so you were on that exact same path, only where they were breaking into systems, you were breaking into buildings.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And I'm very, as I say, I'm very concerned that we don't give a lot of younger minds these days the space and the room to run. I like that you called out things like Hack the Box and so forth. Those resources and those assets are really important now because we don't live in a world that is as forgiving as it once was.
Right.
And these minds need a place to grow and experience these challenges and try out their skills in real world sort of play environments. Otherwise, if all you're doing is prepackaged, kind of by the book lessons, are you really learning how things work out there on a job?
Right. So because I have to know, how did you make that transition? Because where with the digital side and with hackers, we see, the development of software companies and software and, and then, countermeasures, to hackers, stuff like that. But for you, how did you plant a flag and say, hey, I can break into a building. Anybody want that?
All the credit there, I think I would heap on a longtime friend of mine who's in town because we're in town for Black Hat and DEF CON, of course. So my buddy Jeff, the Dark Tangent, who started DEF CON and with it Black Hat some years after DEF CON was around. The Black Hat Conference, which I don't know if all your listeners know the full origins. I'll give you the real quick story. It's a brilliant hack of its own type. The origins of Black Hat, the conference and trade show. DEF CON, which originally started as just kind of a going away party for Jeff's bulletin board that he was running. People said, oh man, this is so cool. I came out to Vegas and you had this big party and there were these talks. Are you going to do this again? You got to do this next year. This was great. And he said, I wasn't planning on anything like that. I just kind of threw something together for my friends. If you want it, we'll do it. So then DEF CON happened next year and DEF CON happened the year after that. And DEF CON, the conference, kept growing. And people were coming up to Jeff in the hacker world saying, man, oh, you're a Dark Tangent. You run that DEF CON thing. That's so cool, man. I wish I could go to that. And he would say, then do it. It's a $50 conference. Why don't you just come? He said, no, my company would never send me to that. Why? He's like, well, like you said, it's a $50 conference. It's not professional. It's not, it's not, my boss would laugh me out of the room. And Jeff looked at these people and he said, you're telling me that I'm running an event that is accessible, has great content, has great speakers, has all the information you need, and you can't come because it's too cheap? And they said, basically, yeah. So the very first year that Black Hat started, and Jeff would tell the story with a little more detail, but effectively, he reached out to his most popular speakers, the ones who were already coming to DEF CON. And he said, hey, do me a favor. I want you to come into town almost a week early, and I want to put you up at the Caesar's Palace, and I want you to give the same talks you're going to give at DEF CON, give them a few days early to like feds and suit-wearing people and stuff. And we're going to charge $1,200 at the door. We're going to call it Black Hat. And everyone thought that was nuts. And all those companies that their bosses wouldn't let them come to DEF CON, they said, now this thing, the Black Hat thing, you bring me this pamphlet, this is what you should be going to. Thanks. This is serious business.
Right.
And, it was the same thing for the first few years. And then, of course, Black Hat developed professional trainings, multi-day trainings. And I've been going to DEF CON and Black Hat for ages now. I've been going since DEF CON 8. And good Lord, what is it, DEF CON 33, 34? Oh my good Lord. But when the trainings were starting, people just, hey, you're good at this thing, you should run a training. It wasn't these full-on massive training orgs. And Jeff approached me. Tangent said, hey man, you've been giving lockpicking talks at DEF CON. People love that lockpick stuff you do. You should run a training at Black Hat. And I was like, get the hell out of here. No one's gonna come learn lockpicking from me for 2 days. That's insane. I just do it for free at DEF CON because I love it. And he said, no, you should do it, man. We're going to pack that room. And that was my first professional training that I gave. This is long before Red Team Alliance or anything like that existed. It was just me and my buddy Bobek in a room. And sure enough, we were teaching people the basics. And next year they said, oh, you should do electronics. You should talk about alarms. You should talk about that. And we just kept adding content. And as often happens at Black Hat, many times people will take a whole training and they'll say, this is great stuff. I learned a lot. Can I hire you to do this? And you look at them at the end of 2 days and you say, you just paid to learn how to do it though. Right. And they say, yeah, but my company wouldn't believe me. I'm internal. If I report all these findings, that we really need an external voice to validate all these findings. Can we just hire you guys? I was like, money can be exchanged for goods and services. I don't mind having more money, sure. So that's where some of our earliest clients came from. They were the people we were training at Black Hat, who were then immediately a month later hiring us to come break into their buildings. And then word of mouth spread. We've never done any real marketing of any kind. It's just people, oh, those are the guys who do that stuff. Yeah, I've heard of them. You should take their training. You should hire them to do that thing. And that's how I got my career.
Well, now I guess when, we think of red teaming and getting access to internal, systems and whatnot, like the physical red teaming and the physical pen testing, we think of that. But how did you, before the internet, before all this, was it 2600? How did you find yourself in the, with this set of skills in the hacker community?
Yeah, so you mentioned briefly, I heard a little passing reference to 2600, the magazine, the 2600 meetups. I was part of the 2600 crew back east in Philly where I was living. There was a now is a nonprofit. At the time, it was just kind of a ragtag group of enthusiasts. There's this group called TOOL, the Open Organization of Lock Pickers. That is a group that still exists to this day. I was on their board of directors as a nonprofit board member for a very long time. But it was people just kind of had a passing interest, or you would be at even a professional tech event. You might see somebody picking locks just as a hobby, much in the way that you'll see people nowadays cross-stitching or doing crochet if they're on a long plane flight or sitting in a long lecture in an academic setting. You'd see locks being picked in the hacker world. And for some people, it never went anywhere beyond being a hobby, and for some of us, it became a real obsession.
Yeah.
But yeah, the hobbyist community and the hacker mindset of these are some cool skills. I just want to use them for fun. Fun can become profitable.
We'd like to thank a sponsor tonight. Somebody I've never heard of, but I'm super excited about right now. You see, I have to put on my reading glasses because I'm getting old. And with that age and the abuse that Jack and I have been through the years, the arthritis, the sleep apnea, the insomnia.
Copious amounts of scotch.
Yes, copious amounts of scotch. We had Chris Free on just a short while ago, and he talked about the operator syndrome, right? And, we have TBIs and blast exposure and post-traumatic stress and all these things going on for us. And not just us, but everybody. You're all, subjected to all this stuff. So our new sponsor is Superpower.com. And the reason I'm really excited about Superpower.com is a lot of things that Chris was talking about, a lot of the processes that are going on in our bodies that we don't know about and that like your normal doctor isn't even going to know to check. They're checking this stuff. It's a concierge medical service. We've all been there. You go to the doctor, get your blood drawn, and a week later you hear everything looks fine. And a lot of times you got to pull teeth just to get them to do a basic panel, right? Maybe they tell you to drink more water or exercise more, but that's it. No breakdown of your hormones, no insight to the inflammation, toxins, the nutrient deficiencies, just vague advice and a pat on the back. Superpower Health is a completely different experience. It's a revolutionary new kind of preventative care, more comprehensive, more actionable, and you can do it all from the comfort of your own home. Here's how it works. Twice a year, Superpower sends a licensed professional right to your door to collect a comprehensive lab panel, or you can visit a nearby lab. Superpower measures over 100 biomarkers. That includes your heart, your liver, your thyroid, your hormones, your metabolism, your vitamin, and even your mineral levels. I mean, that is like everything that Chris was talking about, right? Like, and again, a lot of you may not have been in the military, you may not have been special ops, may not have been in combat. It doesn't matter. Like, these stressors, they affect all of us, and, it's just, this is amazing to me. I just cannot wait to get started with this. Then you get a personalized action plan based on your results, all beautifully laid out in their app, plus access to your own private medical team to help guide you. It's the same level of testing and insight that pro athletes get, but at a price that actually makes sense. Stop hoping you'll live a long, healthy life. Start taking action. For a limited time, our listeners get $50 off when they use code TEAM, that's TEAM, code TEAM at superpower.com. The Superpower not only gives you an initial plan, but it tracks your results over your lifetime. Each test builds on the last, giving you a full picture of your progress year after year. So for a limited time, our listeners are getting $50 off an annual Superpower membership by using code TEAM at checkout. Just head to superpower.com and use code TEAM, that's TEAM, to get our exclusive discount. Your biology decoded, your blueprint activated with Superpower. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Like I said, this to me is exciting. Like when they talk about getting all these tests and all these things, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And you have to find somebody who will actually do it.
You also have no idea, like, if you're having aches and pains or you're feeling tired all the time, like you don't know what you're deficient in. It could be a vitamin.
Right.
It could be anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and look, maybe you're old and broken like I am, or young and spry like Jack. But it's always a good time to start. Either find out what's going on or to, stay young and healthy for the next 40 years. So anyway, check them out, superpower.com. Use TEAM at the checkout. Thanks. Yeah, that's fantastic. What was the first, big score for you where you're like, wow, I can actually do this for a living?
I'll answer it in two ways. There was the first time that I sort of unofficially fell into this work, and then the first really good client. And I'll sanitize both of them, obviously. One was a law firm, and this was just a local, to where I was living near Philadelphia. They were just outside the city, and they essentially had a sysadmin, their guy who was on site, the guy who did all the computers and the servers and the accounts. He just kind of rage quit one day, just real table flip, slammed the door, and people were like, I don't know if he's coming back. And I was known as a guy who could get into locked places, just word of mouth. People knew me as that person from the hacker community. And somebody knew somebody who knew somebody who called me. And they said, hey, we have a situation here at this law office. We kind of think we should be doing something. We have this guy leave. We don't know if he has the passwords. We need to mitigate this situation. And I was consulting at the time, which means I was between jobs, right?
Right.
And I said, I can make some room in my schedule. And I made my way over there. And I didn't know if they wanted me essentially to do any tech work, or I didn't know exactly what they wanted, because I thought they said, the door's locked. You got to break. They didn't expect me to break in. They expected me to take over the servers, which, I did a lot of network security work too. So I was there with my copy of Nordal's NT boot and other things. But as I showed up, they said, all right, well, sit tight. We got a locksmith on the way to get you in. As soon as you get in that office, you can do your thing that we hired you to do. And I said, okay. And I sat there and I don't know what I was doing in the lobby. It was pre-social media. I just must have read a magazine. So I was bored. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm on the clock. I've been here a while now. Can you show me what are we talking about for this server room here? And they took me down a hall. And I went, it's just an office door? I'm pretty sure I can bypass that. And sure enough, ka-chunk, you slip. I took the cover off some TPS report equivalent, slip the cover into the door frame, door pops open. And I was like, all right, well, cancel the locksmith. And then I did my thing with all the servers and I'm rebooting. And I said, okay, well, it looks like, you don't have any telnet or SSH running, your mail server, your web must be hosted elsewhere. Yeah, this doesn't look too squirrely. Have a proper incident management team come through, but you're looking pretty good. I can change your root passwords. What do you want that new password to be? I'm writing it down. They go, new root password. Yeah. What'd you do to that door? I was like, oh yeah, your door latches aren't activating correctly because you have access control latches. It's, your locksmith could explain that to you. And he said, no, you explain it to me. Show us in this guy's office. And he's calling partners over. So that was the first time that someone said, oh, you do more than just the ones and zeros. You do that break-in thing. And that I was known just in the local Philly area as a guy who could do that. And as far as nationwide, one of our first, as I mentioned, students that we had was a crew of students from we'll just call them a major tech company. They make internet appliances and internet services that loads of people have interacted with, and they're in your data centers. They're a well-known brand. And they were the ones that shocked. They took us out to dinner. I'd never been to a fancy Vegas restaurant. I'm some young kid. And I was shocked when they said, we got to get your info because we want to hire you. And, a few weeks after Black Hat, they were hiring us to break into multiple offices around the country. And you've done this before, right? I was like, I've broken into a car dealership and a law office in Philadelphia and some other small time stuff. Never anything big like this. Every job you think, you're like, oh, this is going to be the job. This is going to be a tough one. And then you realize, no, there's always a way in. There's always a way you can break in. You can find a way.
Yeah.
And then you just get win after win after win. And you're the guy. We got to hire those guys. Hire that team again. Nowadays, whenever somebody bids a job, they tend to reach out. So RTA is our training company, but the core group is who, our break-in consulting firm. And it's funny, we always get told in these calls, they say, well, yeah, we're talking to you because everyone we talked to either said hire the core group or those guys trained us. like they're the ones who do it, or they're the ones who train the people who do it. Just hire them. So the word of mouth just keeps spreading.
That's fantastic.
I would love to ask, I have to ask, has there ever been a situation where the bad guys wanted to hire you and you're kind of like, this is sketch, or I need to take a step back from this one?
For the longest time, the answer was no. And I'll say there have been two occasions when, you got two stories out of me on this one. Two occasions where things were a little weird. One was a job that we wound up not taking. It was going to be in Taiwan. It was going to be for a very famous property in Taipei. It's very big, famous pictures of it on the internet, where if you're familiar what a tuned mass damper is inside of big buildings, theirs is gorgeous. You can almost walk up and touch it. It's a very famous building. And the whole thing was they wanted to, they said, well, here we are. Taiwan is a very politically sensitive area, and we have a very large neighbor, and we're not sure if they're interested in, our buildings. And we were never actually 100% sure if this was people from the Taiwanese Authority who were worried about China, or if this was China trying to hire us to do something in Taiwan. I mean,
Right.
I think it was probably all on the up and up, but the job wound up never coming to fruition. I said, you know what? That's probably for the best. I'm fine with that. The other one was on the training side at RTA. We did have a student. This was very recent. We've never had this come up until very recently. We had a student in one of our access control classes where, I mean, I don't know if in the show notes you'll link, you can see what our training is very clear. It's talking about iClass and room keys and badge cloning and things like that was one of the things. And this one person showed up, and almost within the first hour, he started asking questions about, so is this how credit cards work? And we're like, well, I mean, credit cards, tap to pay. I mean, they use NFC, they use near field. I mean, it's like RFID, kind of. It is, inductively coupled, but we're talking about badge control systems that you don't use credit cards to get into your data centers.
Right.
And he keeps listening. He's no, but when are we going to do the credit card stuff? ISO 1444B, and we're like, well, what did you just Google? What he was asking questions that made it sound like he just Googled something like card cloning, and found us, and it became apparent that he was literally in class because he thought he was going to learn how to clone credit cards. And everyone around him, this is a mix of feds and other people in the room, looking over at him. And he said, it's like the guy who walks into the head shop and is like, this glass pipe is for the marijuanas, right? And,
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say
eventually
it
we
sounds
get
like
the
it sounds like the 9/11 hijackers that want to learn how to fly but not land the airplane. You're kind of like,
Right? Yeah. And eventually we talked to him during some breaks, and he sounded like a guy. He didn't sound like he was a criminal. It sounded like he was trying to maybe
aspiring.
embark on a new career. He just didn't quite understand why it was. I think he told a story to us about how a relative of his had a legitimate credit card fraud, and how it just got reversed because you call your bank and you say I wasn't in Kansas City, and so he's like, oh, what if you could copy a credit card and then you could use it in a bunch of cities and then you claim it was fraud? It's like free money. He was very young. He was just a very young person, and young people are naive. And we said, first of all, no. I mean, that is not like a crime. That is a crime. You can't do that.
Right.
2, we don't do that here. And 3, you've just said a lot of things that are very actionable in front of people. You should not. You don't do that. please and we talked to him a lot, actually, in the parking lot. The second day we said, we're sorry, we're going to have to, we refunded you. We're like, this is not the class for you. I think you got the wrong idea. No harm, no foul. We took the equipment back, the kit. So he listened to what we had to say, and I think maybe it sent him on a better path. But that was a shocker for me, how you could, look at our class description and come away thinking that that's what the class was about. And he just didn't know the security world. When we explained, he's like, well, why are all these other people in your class? And we're like, well, because they're doing it for good. Like, they're doing it to test and work with these companies to make it better.
Right.
He had no idea that could be a career. He's like, that's so strange. Why would anyone do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, I wonder, because classes like yours, same as like tactical shooting classes or whatever, that there are probably a lot of wannabes out there, right, who take the classes and really, and I don't mean wannabe in an insulting way. It's just they have this idea of being, Johnny High Speed. They take the class and then never do anything with it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All the guys who saw John Wick and wanted to learn center axis relock.
Exactly. I do like center axis relock though. But so that's interesting that you were like a sysadmin and network admin. In my mind, for some reason, I thought that maybe, when you were doing the vanilla stuff, that you were like a locksmith or something.
So I did get my certifications across the board, but that sort of came around the other direction later. Ever since, I have a rule for myself that every year I want to take at least 1 or 2 trainings of some kind, just to learn, just to always be learning a new skill. I think you learn not just about the training that you're in, you learn, I like teaching. I am a teacher by trade, right? And I just learn about teaching by watching other people teach. And I say, okay, boy, I wouldn't have presented that concept that way. I would think of it this way. So, but yeah, just learning a new skill just to keep the brain as elastic as you can. So over time, I've added many credentials and letters to my name in this space, just because, it's like, I won't say a vacation for me, but it is definitely a mental pleasure week when I go down to Lockmasters or Mark Bates Academy or the Sav to Safe Tech conference, something like that. These are skills that I sort of kind of had because I had self-taught myself along the way, and I wanted to, all right, now I think I know this. Let me sit in the class. Oh, actually, no, I didn't know the last 10% of it. I didn't know this new tool exists. I learned that 10 years ago, and now there's a new tool. So I'm finding great value. But at the end of these classes, you wind up, with paper you can hang on the wall, and then you wind up with actual certifications and accreditations. And I say, oh, that's pretty cool. So yes, I am a SAVTA certified professional safe technician. I passed my CPS. I have an ALOA number as a locksmith. I'm a forensic locksmith now. So yeah, people like Tom DeMont and Drumpy, these are icons in the forensics world. They taught me things that you can microscopically look inside of locks and see techniques and tools that might have been in there. Technically, I could testify in court. I don't think I would survive a Daubert challenge or anything. I'm not a professional expert witness by trade. Things like the government safe work. I'm a GSA safe and vault technician and inspector. It's a very long set of training. You take it at MBA or you take it at Lockmasters. It's 2 weeks long. I don't spend all my days on military bases and government installations servicing safes and vaults.
Right.
But I'm certified to.
Right.
I can help you build a skiff. And, the one time a year that we have a client who says, hey, we need a, skiff certified room in this new building. Or the 1 or 2 times I'll do, because you don't make a lot of money on a lot of these government jobs. They're GSA rates. But I'll get a call from an Army base. I live right near, Fort Lewis McChord. Or I'll get a call, like there was a Secret Service office that called me and they said, hey, we have this safe that we have to decommission. It's usually decommissioning. They're like, yeah, we're trying to break this office down and we can't throw this freaking safe out because there might be contents in it. The custodian's long retired. We got to get somebody in there. And I'll take the job just for the fun of it, just to keep the skills fresh it's fun. It's fun to make some sparks and make a little bit of smoke. And then you kind of turn your back as the custodian opens the control drawer, and you hear, like, there's a video on my YouTube channel where they allowed me to record, and the screen goes black, so you don't see but you hear him go, oh man, there was way more in here than we thought there was in here. Holy shit, there's a gun in here, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'll do it just for the fun of that.
So let's start jumping into the topic of safes and safe cracking. I think before we get into the cracking aspect, we should probably talk a little bit about safes. Most people, I think most listeners know what a safe is and have some idea in their mind from like a Donald Duck cartoon guy turning the dial and the door opens and you keep your gold coins inside. But do you want to talk a little bit about the development of safes, the modernization of them, what people use them for, the different types of safes that are out there?
Certainly. A safe or any storage container, a safe, a vault, a safe room. The idea is to make a container that is not impenetrable, because nothing's impenetrable, but you want to cause an attacker more headache than it would be ultimately worth for them to gain the spoils that are contained within. So if you have your jewelry in your house and your important documents, whatever, we'll assign a value to that. Maybe you have a very nice gun collection. You and your spouse and your kids have some valuable jewelry that you've gotten over the years. Call it, I don't know, $50,000, $100,000, anything more than that in terms of financial instruments and hard. You should probably be putting them in a bank vault or a safe deposit box somewhere, in my opinion. But you might have 50K. Well, an attacker, if they know that you have, oh, that's a really wealthy home, let's break in there and steal stuff. If it's going to cost the attacker let's say $10,000-$20,000 in specialized drill rigs, and I have all this safe cracking equipment, but it costs money.
Right.
And it's going to cost the attacker a lot of time and effort, and they're making a lot of noise, and they're worried about their exposure and their likelihood of getting caught. The attacker is going to kind of do the math and say, it's not worth it. I'm going to break into somebody else's house down the road. A safe or a vault is designed to cause more headache, time, delay, energy, effort, and resource spend than the attacker would gain demonstrably by the risk of breaking in. So historically, this was all brute force. You see, like the old West, like people dynamiting safes and things like that. That's what you would have. You'd have usually round, almost like the old Victor cannonballs type safes. You'd have these cast iron, very thick doors, and the lock mechanism was not something somebody would tinker with. The lock and a combination on the lock was designed, like if you didn't know the combination, people weren't teaching safe cracking as a skill broadly back then.
Right.
It was all about that pry bars and nitroglycerin and how can you withstand detonating the safe? Or if you had to blow the safe up, will it blow up all the money in it? I think that was in maybe some old cowboy movie where they blow up a safe, but then the money all gets burned up inside the money. They're going through, this one's pretty good. I think this bill is a lost cause. But over time, we do run the risk of not just sort of smash and grab. We started saying, well, what about if an authorized person were to try to steal from the safe? What if somebody were to, use duress on an authorized person and say, hey, you open the safe right now for me? Which didn't happen nearly as much as we are led to believe by Hollywood. It was actually very hard to hold up a town in the Old West because you'd have to get away, right? I mean, there's only one or two roads out of town.
Right.
There's nowhere to go. You're on a horse. Guess what? Everyone else is on a horse.
Yeah.
If your horse runs out of energy 50 miles outside of town, the people coming behind you with all their guns are going to be right on your heels.
Yeah.
So those sort of robberies like that, bank robberies, really changed with the automobile. That's the history of modern bank robberies with sort of Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde and Lamb. But the idea of a bank robber who would maybe not use brute force or duress, but who would use, I'm going to be the inside man breaking in.
Right.
That was also a real big concern in the government as we started to see the modernization of the intelligence apparatus in our country, which is really a product of, the First World War, the interwar years with the OSS, and then of course World War II is when we get really the modern intelligence community. The idea of classified documents and document storage, and what if we have spies who have been bribed or leveraged? Well, this person knew the combination. It's not how robust the safe is, and how do we prevent that? So that's where we start to see things like the development of time locks, where on the inside of the safe door, there is a movement, there's a mechanical time movement, and you set it, and until that clock winds down, the safe simply cannot be effectively opened. And time locks were great for a while, until, as I like to remind people, December 7th, 1941, the day that will live in infamy, was a Sunday. And there's actual stories during the attack on Pearl where people were running around at the Navy base. They're running around Schofield Barracks, Hickam Field, and they're like trying to get into the safes to get the war plans because the Japanese Zeros are flying out of the sky and things are blowing up in the harbor. And all of a sudden, oh, wow, war is 7 days a week. We can't just use time locks anymore for our government safes. Banks to this day, banks still use time locks. Civilian world still uses time locks extensively. But the development of manipulation resistant, or what some people would call manipulation proof, kind of anti-manipulation safe mechanisms and dual custody safe locks. This is all a product of the Second World War and the immediate post, World War II kind of Cold War era, the espionage era being really in its heyday. That's where we see the modern landscape of safes and vaults and mechanisms that are meant not just to resist brute force, but are meant to prevent unauthorized access from all different manifold angles.
Hey guys, our show is sponsored by GhostBed. Check them out, please. They make awesome mattresses, awesome pillows, awesome bedding. GhostBed provides high quality and super comfortable award-winning mattresses crafted in the US and Canada. Did you know that 60% of US adults report being too hot when they're trying to sleep? That's me. I'm a sweaty little baby. That's why we designed all of our products with cooling features so you stay comfortable and asleep all night long. Pair any of our mattresses with GhostBed's award-winning adjustable base and get the ultimate sleep experience. GhostBed rules the family-owned business, 60,000 plus 5-star reviews. They have sleep experts on staff with 20 plus years of experience. So if you have any questions, you can hit them up and ask them, maybe what kind of mattresses work for you. 20 plus year warranty. That's 2 times the industry standard. Free shipping and returns on mattresses. Most of the products ship out within 24 hours. They have in-house customer support and sleep experts chilling in Plantation, Florida. It rules. It's the best. They give you 101 nights risk-free to make sure that these beds are right for you. If you don't like it after 101 nights, you could send it back, full refund. When you purchase a GhostBed mattress, your comfort guaranteed. I'm reading it right now, and it's capital letters, guaranteed. Okay? They do the right thing, and they're a great company. If you're not sure which GhostBed's right for you, like I said before, you could take their mattress quiz online, or you can give a call to one of their sleep experts, and they'll help you with exactly what you possibly could need, what works for you and what doesn't. And the best news about this is, Team House listeners and viewers, you get an extra 10% off site-wide for a limited time. You just go to ghostbed.com/house and use the code HOUSE at checkout. One more time, that's ghostbed.com/house with the code HOUSE, HOUSE, at checkout for an extra 10% off site-wide. I want to thank GhostBed for their continued support. I want to thank all the fans that listen and watch for their continued support. Without you guys, we are nothing. So thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for supporting the companies that help support the show. ghostbed.com/house for 10% off. Made in the US, made in Canada. Shout out to our brothers in Canada. They rock. Check them out. I love GhostBed. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox, and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, K-I-T, Kilo India Tango.com/join. It's fascinating. And so I never knew that about World War II. Did you, Jack?
About Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
No. First time I heard that
It's
one.
fascinating. So what are the steps to, because when we look at modern movies or even older movies, the criminal always gets an exact replica of the safe, and then they spend, days or weeks practicing on it with their stethoscope or, their drill where it just hits the glass pane. But what are the actual steps for a modern, safe cracker?
So that's a really cool question. And a guy I like very much, he's been in touch with me in the past. He's an icon of the industry, Dave McComey. He actually appears in some videos online. He's been interviewed about how realistic was this or that scene in a movie. He has a wonderful walkthrough. I'll send you the URL if you want to put it in the show notes for people.
That'd be great.
But it is true that safe crackers and technicians need to know what's on the other side of that steel door. What is the mechanism? And learning about it either by getting a replica of the safe, or if you're on the up and up, if you're in the actual SAVTA, Safe and Vault Technicians Association land, there's a whole knowledge database. There's the List Council, there's LockNet, there's whole databases that you can reference that show, this from this year to this year, Diebold Mosler was making their vault doors with this mechanism and this bolt work on this. So this is where the mechanism is. This is where the drill point is. This is where you want to be careful. There's a relock trigger over here. There's a relock device over here. So knowing what's on the inside is often the first step in trying to either neutralize a safe or even just diagnose a problem. Figuring out, okay, the safe was working yesterday. Customer reports it doesn't work today. Well, if you roll up over there and you say, how are you, show me how you're dialing the safe, and you watch them and you say that should work. Why is that not working? And then you think to yourself, wait a minute, I know safe technicians that have different models of safe lock, in their van. And they'll have a cutaway, and they'll actually, now, wait a minute, if I'm turning it clockwise, what the frig am I doing? They're looking at, they go, no, the fly, okay, so you might have a stuck fly going counterclockwise. Okay, try it this way. Here, turn the thing, and you get a dead blow hammer, and you say, wait, don't turn the number. Bang! Dial the next number now. Okay, now you're about to hit the bolt work on this side. Bam! Okay, yeah, we got her open. Cool. Because you need to know, if I hit it right about here, if something's stuck or wasn't greased, knowing what's on the inside of the door is a huge part of the whole process.
Fascinating. It's fascinating.
Do you want to talk a little bit, because I think during your talk at DEF CON, you mentioned this a little bit, about what the stethoscope actually was and how there was a period, maybe a brief period of time, where that was useful, but not today.
Yeah. Yes. So to this day, if you're doing manipulation, this is with purely mechanical safe locks. I mean, there are attacks for electronic safes as well, but manipulation, as we've often seen in Hollywood, you'll see as you mentioned, the stethoscope, or the low tech is like putting the ear up to a glass or something like that.
Right.
You're not really hearing a lot of many mechanisms clicking and clanking, like the Foley guy doing the production of a film likes to add all these sound effects. What you're trying to find is very precisely learning what are called contact points. It's a very specific area of the safe dial where, to use some technical terms, where the nose on the lever arm is trying to drop into the opening on what's called a cam wheel. And you're trying to find, okay, touch here. And as you're dialing the dial, you're dialing this cam wheel, touch. And you want to get those contact points very carefully identified. Because as you manipulate, the process of manipulating a safe is experimenting with different numbers around the wheel and seeing if those contact points change very slightly. What's actually happening, and I don't know if your viewers are getting this in audio only, if they're seeing my hands in front of my black shirt here, but imagine if that nose is dropping a little further into an aperture, those contact points will get a little tighter together than they would if you were up here, higher up. You're looking for where the safe wheels are almost lined up, but not fully lined up, and you're taking notes. You say, oh, something's happening around 17, question mark, 17, and you come back and you run the numbers again, and you say, okay, no, I'm seeing something on 42, maybe, and you're slowly getting the safe to leak information out at you. But as Dave and others have pointed out in their videos about this subject, you're doing much more visual observation. So it's fine if you want to use a stethoscope, or in modern times, we would use an audio amplifier, a little magnetic microphone. You can hear the contact points, but you're never, in Hollywood, you're often just kind of, you see the person is looking off into space as they're just listening. What you're really doing is listening and looking particularly.
And what are you looking for, like little hitches and then as the dial goes or something like that?
Yeah, you're looking for the behavior of the dial at a very specific spot where it would be called the drop-in area. That's where the contact points are. And if those contact points, if I'm running the dial and my contact points are always, let's call it 98 and 7, and I run the dial some more, 98, 7, 98, and 7, and then I'm starting to, and I get to a point where I'm trying some numbers, and then I come back to my contact points, and then all of a sudden it's at 99 and 6. I'm like, ooh, my contact points got a little tighter together. I think my nose is dropping a little further into the cam. Let's jot that down. I might have a good number there. Now, just because you found a potential number, well, you don't know where in the combination that is. There's a series of diagnostic dialing techniques that you would use to try to determine where on the dial or where in the combination that the dial should be dialed to that number. And little by little, and sometimes it's fun. Sometimes if you're working with the customer and you say, I'm finding a 17 and I'm finding a 76, and they say, oh, yeah, that's right. Dad loved 1770. He was a real patriot. That's the second and third digits. I remember that now. I say, well, does that jog your memory at all? Do you remember the first friggin' digit? We could just dial for dollars. So we could just try all that. You just reduce the key space a hell of a lot by telling me that.
Yeah. This itself sounds like its own specialty, right? And then you have all of the alarm bypass, electrical bypass, all the different types of sensors, all the different types of doors. Would you consider yourself an expert in all these things, or do you consider yourself like an expert in entry and being a generalist, and then being able to brush up on stuff as needed?
I think it's the hallmark of hubris of the worst kind to consider yourself an expert in too many things, or maybe any one thing at all. So I'll be the first to point out I'm not necessarily an expert in almost anything, but I'm a dedicated person in many things, we will say. There's a lot of people I work with who would disagree with me and say I'm being too modest, probably, but that's for them to come on and tell you about later. They can talk about me. I'll talk about, I work with plenty of experts. I work with the electronic access control expert, my colleague Bobak, who owns RTA and Core. I work with my alarm system expert, our guy Brian, who came out of the intelligence communities, right? But I am a specialist in several things, and I believe in broadening your horizons as much as possible, which again, it's been an amazing journey. I never was a ones and zeros person. I mean, I was a network person, right, but I never was an access control electronic locks person at all. And through sitting in the back of the room when, Red Team Alliance access control class, I would just kind of sit in the back in case somebody needed me to hand them something. Well, I got to hand out the next access, I'll hand out the access control cards. And then I would, sit up front with Bobak. And I would help him. Like, I can teach the basic prox cloning. I can do that module if you need to take a break from ease your voice. And now I routinely fill in running whole sections of the access control class just because I work with these exceptionally skilled people, and it's rubbed off on me. It's made me better to take just like the the forensics thing. Like, I'm not an expert by any means at forensics, but I wanted to learn lock forensics. And you keep seeing these guys. You say, You gonna come to my next class, man? You did the first class with us. Come take the advanced class next month. It's like, man, I don't do this for a living. It's like, yeah, but you were great in class. I said, all right, just come to your class, man. And all of a sudden you look around and you go, holy crap. Am I better at this than the average bear?
Let me also ask you about some of the other tools that get used. You mentioned, there's like $20,000 drills, specialized drills. I've also heard about the thermic lance gets used sometimes. channeling our knowledge from James Caan's role in Thief. I think that's a 1981 film. Great movie. But anyway, what are some of the other tools of the trade that get used, even as we move forward into the era of electronic locks?
Right on, right on. And yes, Jimmy Kahn in Thief, that's a real rig that he is using. Whoever their technical advisor was on that film is exemplary, because, and again, like Dave McComey did a whole breakdown of that movie in one of his videos online. And and also Mike, I love Michael Mann's work.
So
it's
good.
like a whole world where cities are always perpetually wet and at night. I just love the look of it. And the idea of these big rigs, what you're trying to do with most professional safe cracking gear is apply force without fatiguing yourself and maintaining a drill in a very accurate spot. Because anybody can just kind of go up with a giant, like when I'm breaking into a government safe and they're taking it out of service completely, I mean, I'll make a pretty big friggin' hole in it. I'll use a giant hole saw. And even then, I'm still trying to not fatigue my arms. I have a rig that I'll mount to the front of the safe so I can just crank on it, use a big quill. But you're trying to apply pressure in a way that you can get through, because they're all different kinds of material. There's all kind of metallurgy and cutting science. Are you doing a metal cutting technique? Are you doing a grinding technique? Are you doing precision cutting where you're actually switching bits? There are plenty of times where you're going through different styles of material. So there's different types of barrier mesh where it's soft mild steel, then it's the hard steel plate, then it's ball bearings. It's something that's like hard plate that you can't cut through with high-speed steel. You have to switch to a diamond cutter where you're actually coring it out and you're punching and you're cracking it away and you're knocking debris out of the hole. And then you switch, maybe you come up to, maybe you're using, as you say, a burning bar or thermic lance, and then there might be a layer of material like copper in the middle of the safe just to distribute the heat. So, copper won't ablate away. You can't oxidize, like you can't do an oxidizing burn on copper. You have to switch to another tool. And all of these things, it raises the stakes for the attacker, and it raises the level of investment that the attacker would have to have. If this is your livelihood and you have a full safe tech shop, you have all the tools. For an attacker to break in, if this is their one big score, they're not going to get through all of that. They would have to invest in so much time and training. But yeah, the precision point, if you're even a quarter inch off, you can not only miss what you're drilling for, you can ruin the job. You can not only fail to open it, you can make it inoperable, completely unable to be opened ever again. Or without completely destroying a whole other side of the safe, let's say. So maintaining that exact precision point, that's why you see these large rigs that will be fixed in place, either with a vacuum pump or magnetically attached or by some other means of stabilization.
I think all I ever learned was drill a hole in it, fill it with water, and put some blasting caps in it. So I guess that I guess.
Yeah, the score. The score was one of Brando's last pictures. De Niro was in that with the young Ed Norton.
Yeah,
and it is based on a type of technique that has been done. The one major thing about that movie that's not real is most safes aren't watertight. So in that movie, they actually tap the sprinkler system. They like pull a big hose of water down. And it wouldn't work that way in real life, which also I'm a fire services technician now. I do a lot of life safety and fire suppression inspection. And do you know that if water is flowing through any sprinkler head, it'll set off alarms in a building? There's flow sensors that are all tied into any building automation and emergency services controls. So you can't just get a bunch of water out of a sprinkler head and have nothing go wrong in the building. That won't work. But that was a real technique, yeah. But you would have to tape the entire safe up. You'd have to fill the whole safe with water by sealing the entire safe shut.
That's fascinating. So with, Jack had mentioned, like, I think you mentioned biometrics, but like, because both with your regular sort of breaking and entering stuff and, with the advent of the flipper and, and all these other tools that are out there now, and with safe and security, we see biometrics. Are these systems more secure, less secure, or just secure in a different way?
The diplomatic answer is, I like your phrasing, they're secure in a different way. They are solving for a different problem. Nowadays, loads of businesses, let's say a convenience store, like a 7-Eleven or something, might have a cash safe. The sticker on the door, teller does not have access to safe, no more than $20, blah, 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 blah. Those used to all be mechanical locks. And the teller, in fact, would not, the kid working the register wouldn't have the combination. It was just the money drop guy and the manager. Those introduced a lot of user friction, and they weren't really preventing a lot of robberies. Nowadays, if somebody's going to try to steal from a money drop, they're going to rob the bread truck, right? They're going to rob the car, the armored car. So they said, why are we using these mechanical locks that are more cumbersome to maintain? They're harder for a lot of customers to learn how to use. Customers didn't really understand. We live in a world of keypads nowadays. If someone can dial a phone, they can understand how to use a keypad electronic safe. Mm-hmm. Safe technicians, especially older guys, didn't like the introduction of electronics because they were, quote, less secure. There's an electronic bypass is way easier than a mechanical one, right? There's a tool called the Phoenix. There's a tool called the little black box. We won't get way into what's called differential power analysis, and that's how these tools work. But there are tools that will pop open a lot of electronic locks very quickly. But that's not the main problem that a lot of these safe manufacturers and small businesses are solving for. The main problem they're solving for is, I need a way to very quickly operate a safe, and if I change the combination, I know how to write down I know how to enter the new combination, I won't forget it. And their day-to-day problem isn't a stick-up or a robbery. Their problem is like, hey, the guy from Brinks is waiting here and he's yelling at me and he says, sorry, you're taking too long. I don't know what you're doing wrong. I'm going to get you next week.
Right.
So electronic locks are more convenient. They're definitely not more secure, in my opinion.
Right. Right.
Let's jump into the history of intelligence services and how they intersect with this field. To add a little bit of context for folks out there, I think we should talk a little bit about why this matters. Intelligence services are known to, amongst other things, break into embassies and break into safes in those embassies, if not just take the safe out and break into it offsite somewhere. There's an article in Smithsonian Magazine that I think a lot of you guys would be interested in. It's called The CIA Burglar Who Went Rogue, about this guy named Douglas Grout. And it's about this guy who was a safe cracker for the CIA. And he broke into safes in all sorts of different embassies in different parts of the world. And then he felt that he got screwed over, and he sort of tried to blackmail the CIA for money. And it didn't go so well. But that's an interesting article to talk about, how these intelligence services have these capabilities. I don't know if you read that one, Deviant, and what your thoughts are about that particular incident.
Yeah, so the real fascinating thing about the IC world is that these are technicians who aren't breaking in to safes in a way that is easily detectable, right? Many times, I can teach manipulation to any of y'all. Like, we teach a manipulation class at RTA, but for the most part, I'm not usually manipulating a safe. If somebody says, "Hey, this safe, needs to get opened," and even your best technicians nowadays drill and repair and patch it up. We can patch it up so it looks like we were never there, but that takes a little while. And if somebody inspects the inside of the safe, they can see, oh yeah, look, take the panel off. You can see, oh, there's somebody was in here. So getting into a safe in the way that even with dedicated inspection, it does not look like anyone was ever there. That's kind of the real bread and butter of the intelligence community. And that's the scariest thing, because if somebody broke in, you can respond. You can either change your security posture going forward, or if you had a list of important documents in there, you can, well, those documents are now compromised. We're not going to use those route plans. We're not going to use these assets anymore. If somebody in the intelligence world really just kind of goes out there and operates in a way that isn't easy to detect, that's really freaky. That's really scary, because they could be operating for a long time without people reporting the crimes. And there have been instances where professional technicians, if I'll give you one, you mentioned that article for your viewers. I'll try to give you one again. I don't know if you do show notes. I'll find it. There was a crew of professional safe technicians. I believe they operated mostly around the American Southeast, out of Florida and other parts of Georgia. They would use general aviation, flying VFR. My wife, my wife's almost an aspiring pilot, and my friend Alyssa's a pilot. Like VFR, visual flight rules. You don't have to fly all flight plans. You can just take your little Cessna or your little Piper Cub or something and just fly to another city. And if you follow, the rules of the sky, like you're just, okay, I'm flying at the right altitude and then I land, okay, I radio. And these guys were bouncing around to different towns and getting in and getting out over the course of a weekend, not staying in, hotels or anything like that under their names. And it was, people couldn't figure out like why this is like professional safe technician work. And the cops and the FBI were looking at lock shops like in that town.
Right.
Like, were all your employees here? Did anyone take any tools home this weekend? What happened? This is professional work. Eventually they got caught, as many criminals do. But yeah, in the government land, the idea of that, what we would call a clandestine entry. Quick bits of terminology for anybody who's interested in the forensic classifications of things. You have overt, covert, surreptitious, and clandestine. And these speak to the questions of who will notice and how will they notice that something bad has happened. Overt, anyone can understand, right? If I make a giant hole with a hole saw in a small government filing cabinet that's locked up and it's going to the scrap heap, well, that's a giant friggin' hole and I'm not repairing it. That's very overt. Who will notice? Anybody will notice with their naked eye. And how will they know? They'll just look at it. They'll look at that. This frigg's got a hole in it. Covert, when you talk about covert operations, it doesn't mean there's no evidence. It just means that someone would not notice the evidence unless they had special training. So if I'm leaving small scratches or marks on a surface of a door because I was using some hook to bypass my way into a room, anybody could see that. You don't need magnification. Like, oh, look, there's some scratches on the latch. But unless someone's had special training, it wouldn't put two and two together to say, oh, those are not regular wear and tear. That's a bypass latch tool. It's a covert entry. Surreptitious, now we get one better. Who will notice? Somebody with training. How will they notice? They're specifically looking for it with investigative techniques. They're not just seeing it with a naked eye. They say, all right, let's get the magnifier out, let's dust it, let's look inside. That's the forensic locksmithing that I'm working. I'm seeing signs of surreptitious entry inside of a lock usually. But clandestine is that's the real big one, right? That's when who will notice? Nobody. How will they notice? They won't. You're not leaving attributable evidence that points to the nature of the crime or points back to you. Or if you're, the government, it doesn't point back to you as a friendly power. It's not like your embassy's not getting a phone call. So that kind of skill, because if you break into a government safe, the value is not, hey, I got those secret documents. The real value is we got the documents and they don't know that we got them.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because that's not just with safe cracking, but that I remember that section in Tool where they had all the different package at DEF CON, the Tool corner. They had all the different packages.
The tamper seals, yeah.
The tamper seals and all that stuff. And, people sitting there, just patiently applying like acetone. I don't even know what they use, but, how do I take what's in this box out of this box and put all of the, tamper seals back on the box so nobody knows I got in?
Yep.
Fascinating stuff. So
acetone is one of the things you would use. Yeah, you can use very pure acetone. Isopropyl is popular. You'll see the real secret sauce is a non-polymer. I'm trying to think. It's a non-polar solvent. It's called N-heptane. That's N-heptane does some wild stuff. You can lift seals off of all kind of weird substrates, and it doesn't. There could be ink like serial numbers on the seal. And if you smear that with acetone, that ink's going to run, right?
Uh-huh.
And heptane is lifting the solvent. It doesn't even smear the ink. It's amazing.
Crazy stuff.
So let's see where to pick up on this. Where do you want to start as far as Cold War with KGB and CIA trying to break into and steal each other's secrets?
Yeah, so we talked about time locks and how we realized that in the government and military space, time locks, they ain't it. Like it's not gonna do the job. So we've had to develop what we thought and many manufacturers touted as manipulation resistant or manipulation proof mechanisms. And over the years, the only clandestine technique was that very slow, methodical manipulation that I described, just dial manipulation. If you defeat that or make it very hard to do, and there's mechanical ways you can do that. If any of the listeners have ever had a combination lock that they've had to enter a combination and then do another thing, twist a little what's called a butterfly knob or push the dial in, or it depends. Maybe you're opening weapons lockers, a 2937 or an old 8400 series. Like, these were designed to prevent manipulation or make manipulation very hard. The intelligence services that tried to get around that, there are ways to manipulate what are called group 1 safes. The locks, that it's just so challenging. They said, all right, we need a better way. We need some other technique. What we started to see, and this is coming up around the 50s and really the 60s, we started to see the use of radiographic techniques, gamma graph methods, where, I mean, it sounds utterly bananas when you describe it to people, but the use of a high emittance radioactive isotope placed behind or even sometimes within the safe mechanism, because on vault doors they would do this by making a pinhole in the door frame sometimes, or if it's a safe, you could just move the safe away from the wall and put the radioactive isotope behind the safe. If they couldn't, they would get more isotope and just bring it in the next room. They'd be like, all right, go to the next room, just put it over there. And you're putting film, like you're literally putting X-ray film in front of the safe and developing an image to see what's happening inside the safe lock. And then you have to reverse out. There's a whole technique about it. I mentioned this in a talk that I gave recently about a team from Poland. There's a team, they were just called like Division 9, like, the Special Squad number 9. They were the invisible team. In fact, the name of there's a book all about it. It's called Niewidzialny. It's a book, it means invisible. It's in Polish. The whole book is in Polish by Thomas Iwasowicz. He's a Polish investigative journalist. And what Division 9, right, well, Special Group Number 9 was doing, at the time, Poland was part of the Warsaw Pact. They were part of the Comblock forces, right? So they were breaking into our embassies and our NATO allies' embassies using these techniques. The reason we know about it now is because, of course, Poland is no longer, the Warsaw Pact doesn't exist. Poland, late in the Cold War, I mean, they flipped, right? Poland became part of our allyship, and all these intelligence operators suddenly were collaborating with us. Some of them, we would just debrief them. Others were people that had to come to the West for like medical treatment because they were handling these freaking isotopes very unsafely.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Were they, because like when you get the X-rays, how you have to wear the lead. The lead thing. Like, I can't imagine it was good for their health.
No, it was not. And these guys knew that they were taking a hit. They wore dosimeter badges and such, and some of them knew, but it was all for, it was their job. That's where they saw it. And even just transporting the isotopes around, they kind of rigged up these not really safe containers just to make them slightly man portable. And they used just dosimeters and other measuring devices outside the container. Like, man, these are not doing the job. They're not good. They told stories about how if they were on long jobs or they would drive from city to city, they would put the isotope in the trunk of one car. Thing would be down on its rear leaf springs, like this floating steering that was barely on the road. And they'd put one guy driving that car. And everyone else would get in another car like 50, 100 meters behind. And they'd caravan, and they'd even on long trips, they'd stop and they'd rotate people out to who's the guy sitting with the isotope on this long drive.
Wow.
So yeah, it was not healthy. But for the longest time, they were doing things that was thought of as nothing short of magic. And people could not figure out. They were bringing these just troves of documents that the intel community in Poland and in Russia and elsewhere, they were sending the documents back. They're like, how are you getting these documents? What the frig are you guys? You guys are wizards. And yeah, they were literally using electronic radiographic techniques to image our safe locks and get them open to see inside the safe.
That's fascinating.
And then we figured out something might be up. They have their spies just as we have our spies elsewhere. And they were trying to source the isotopes through various scientific research labs and they had covers. So why are you buying this cobalt? They would use cobalt or iridium 192. And our people figured out, they said, something might be up with this. I think, are they doing that? And we tried it and we said, oh, we can, yeah, this is actually a real thing. So we started making safes that would prevent that. And we use plastic wheels inside of many of our safes, and plastic wheels and lead shielding. And then they would just use different isotopes, and there were different techniques that were even more dangerous. And yeah, I talk all about that in this presentation that I gave in North Carolina and in DC not too long ago.
Are those online? Are those presentations online?
They are.
Okay, great.
They are.
Yeah.
I'll drop links for you, and you can share them with others.
Yeah, we'll put everything that he is talking about. I wrote down the name of, Division 9. I'll let's get the name of the book from you. Now with Google Translate and you take a picture of a page and read it.
Yeah, I do have a copy of the book that I downloaded. You can buy the book electronically in Polish. And yeah, you can kind of machine translate it. So there's been this machine translated version that a bunch of my friends and I, we kick it around in the intelligence world. It's a fascinating read. At least one person who saw this, who speaks very fluent Polish, he's like, man, I want to do a professional, proper translation.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Tomasz he's still a journalist. He's still in publication. You just reach out to the author, tell him if enough people in the United States market tell him we want to read this book, maybe he'll do an official publication of it in English.
For sure. Yeah. We should get in the publishing business, Jack.
As far as some of the things that get stolen, in that Smithsonian article I mentioned, you can sort of infer that we're probably trying to break into safes in Pakistani embassies, probably trying to figure out nuclear strategy stuff. That's just my inference from the article. There's another interesting report out there that says in 1958, the CIA actually accessed the Sputnik satellite that the Soviets had put into orbit, and they had access to it while it was out on world tour, and they had it for 3 hours to themselves to dismantle, examine, reassemble, and then, as you point out, clandestinely replace without anyone being the wiser. Interesting case of, breaking and entering for technological intelligence, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. I never realized that. That's really dope. What the heck were these guys? Were the Soviets just going out to dinner and leaving it in their hotel room? What the hell were they doing?
They were in the land of the big PX, so.
Apparently, it's in a book by Patrick J. McGarvey, who wrote it a while back. Okay. But as far as what country that happened in, that got redacted by the CIA. So we don't know.
Fascinating.
Okay.
I mean, I imagine that they also didn't only take, but probably at times placed or exchanged.
Sure.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to have people doing what you want them to do when they think it's what they're supposed to be doing. When did you, is this sort of love of the history of it kind of recent for you, Deviant? Or have you been studying the history of the IC and safe cracking, stuff like that for quite a while?
It's something that has grown over time for me. I definitely have done some reading in the past, but this latest, because the book I mentioned from Tomasz Ivasovich, that's only, I believe, from 2021 or 2022. That was a pandemic read for me.
Fascinating.
So what else do you have for us on this topic? I've spilled some tea. You have some juicy details about intelligence services and safe cracking?
Well, let's see. I mean, all the locks that we use in the government space nowadays, and I touch on this in that same presentation, anybody who's ever worked maybe for a DoD contractor or something like that, some of the listeners may be familiar with these. They're called electromechanical safe locks nowadays, where it's not a keypad, it is a dial, but there's an electronic component in there, and you actually have to spin it a number of times to spin it up and to charge it, and then a little numerical display will show. These are safe locks nowadays they're made by Dormakaba. The Kaba company is huge. It was Kaba Moss for a long time because the originating company was Moss Hamilton. The entire story of how the Moss Hamilton Safe Company came about and how it was proposed as a standard. It gets into a lot of, if you care about how your tax dollars get spent in this country, the FFL 2740 government lock standard was really pushed by a small group of people who they came up with a new idea for a lock, and then they used a lot of political influence to get it accepted as a new standard. And then that was the only lock that qualified under the standard.
Right.
And this, for the longest time, if many people would be familiar with the name Sargent and Greenleaf. I mean, they're a huge name in the safe and lock world.
We use those to lock up weapons in the Army.
Yeah. So Sargent and Greenleaf, like, they had the entire safe lock market covered, especially for the government and the Army. And then this new standard came out, and Sargent and Greenleaf locks didn't comply because only one lock complied.
Right.
It's the one that the designers of the standard made. And S&G spent all this effort trying to undermine and figure out, hey, how do we get either that product knocked off the qualifying products list, or how do we get a product approved on the qualifying products list? And all this inside politicking and inside baseball, where these locks were being tested and evaluated and found to be faulty. They were found to be defeatable. And yeah, just a lot of like senators are involved making phone calls and a lot of lawsuits. In fact, it comes back to Dave McComey and his colleagues, Mike Madden. Mike Madden was, he's DOE, so he was at Livermore. I know I've spoken to Mike about this at length as well. And yeah, they were proving, like with experiments, they were proving, hey, this brand new whiz-bang lock is vulnerable. And they did a whole write-up about it that was going to be published in the trade press. And it never saw the light of day because there was a lot of threats over lawsuits. And to his credit, Dave's just a lovely. I can't say enough nice things about Mr. McComey. Dave McComey's a great guy. He didn't want the main technician who did who was hired to do the research, right? He didn't want him to experience ramifications, maybe have his clearance screwed around with. So that article was never put out. Now I've read the article, I've seen it, but. Yeah, for the longest time, this was just this rumor. Oh, have you heard somebody used to mess with that XO lock? No, that didn't happen. Yeah, it happened. It absolutely happened. And none of these locks have ever been removed from the qualified products list. To this day, I still find the original lock, the XO7 it was called. It is still in the field on some containers. Props for long lifespan, right? It's way beyond their originally anticipated duty cycle. But they're still out there. They're still in use, locking up materials to this day.
Well, it's interesting that sort of reflects what you and the other instructors and the people at DEF CON and Black Hat teach on the hacker, electronic, digital side, that everyone claims their stuff is secure, but it really isn't. And a lot of these companies kind of try to whitewash that or gloss over it and pretend it's not happening. And it's interesting to see the parallel in the physical security world as well. Yeah,
I really do wish that more companies operated in the way that finally software and network security companies do now with like bug bounty programs,
right,
and willingness to engage with researchers and do what's would nowadays be called a coordinated disclosure, where the researcher gets to put out a paper, but only after the threat they have found has been mitigated properly. And oftentimes the researchers will work with these vendors that have these programs. They'll say, all right, let's collaborate. Let's keep you under NDA until we get it fixed. And then you get the credit and the fame and the recognition for your hard work. And the public is made safer, both in the short term by not disclosing, and in the long term by everyone getting to upgrade and getting a new version. We don't see that nearly as much with the physical mechanical world.
Right.
Because, if a software package has a bug, they fix it and they say, all right, download version 14.6. You download it on the internet, you click OK, install. If a safe lock has found to have a bug, we saw this with hotel doors, right? Lots of things have been done in the hotel doors. Back when I think Cody Brocious did the Onity locks a long time ago with like a little, like an Arduino that he made some code on. And then there were some kids very recently, the Salto product, the safe lock, which they called the unsafe lock when they did their DEF CON presentation. These are products where the researchers worked with some vendors, but like the fix is some technician going around to like every freaking door and like installing a hardware flash. and hotels across the country, like having to rotate out all of their keys, like their card stock that they have a big box of. Like, no, you got to throw that card stock away. We need new silicon inside those room keys. So the lift is so much more to make an upgrade in the physical world that a lot of vendors still want to play the no, I didn't hear that. No, I don't want to know there's a problem kind of game.
Well, I mean, because it's all money. Then they don't. It reminds me of sort of like vehicle, car recalls, vehicle recalls. It's a numbers game. It's like, how much money will this cost us? Not how many people will we save. And so I imagine for a physical security company, it's the same thing. It's like, we don't care if you can defeat our locks as long as not everybody knows about it.
Right.
And it's sad. It's scary. What are some of the things in
It brings us back to
Go ahead. No, please. No, go ahead.
Oh,
Mike.
it brings us back. I'm recalling Ed Norton. We mentioned Edward Norton in the movie The Score. He was also in the movie adaptation of with Chuck Palahniuk's book, Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
There's that line. He's talking to someone on an airplane in the movie, and he says, "I work for a major actuarial insurance firm," and he's literally talks about the formula. He's like, if there's a certain model of car and the brakes fail and people can die in a car wreck, we'd do the math of how many times it would happen. What's the average payout in a wrongful death lawsuit? And if it costs more than we're not going to recall the brakes.
Right. Yeah. What are some of the things, you've talked about some of these locks that are still out there in service and hotel doors. What are some of the things that you see, whether it's government buildings or commercial buildings, that aren't like a failing of the actual hardware, but that they do like consistently that defeats their own security? And then on the personal side, what do you see people do with their own homes or whatever that is also sort of this repeatable offense?
Sure. Two very different sort of answers there. One thing that I see a lot of, and all of my colleagues would probably also say this, is sort of improper installation or two different systems that are not ever tested together. For example, I will mention that I do a lot of things with fire suppression and fire and life safety. If you're ever in a building, especially if you're in hotels, if you're in a corporate commercial space, the next time you're passing through a door, an opening, and if it's a kind of a heavy door, look at the hinge side of the door frame and the door itself, the little butt side of the door, and you might see a metal or foil sticker. These are called they're labeled door assemblies. These are for fire doors. A fire door, if it has a certain endurance rating of 45 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, the entire assembly is tested together. So you'll have, you name who's making the door, True Door Products, they make a whole door assembly, and then that gets sent off to a big testing lab, Warnock Hersey or Intertech or Underwriters Lab, somebody like that. They will test the entire door and the door frame and the hinge, all these components together. Mm-hmm. And they'll literally put it in a furnace and they'll hit it with a hose stream test to see if it bows or breaks or pops open. And then it is, blessed and approved. It gets a labeled rating. But that is how it is done this way at the factory. And you can't make any modifications in the field. In fact, that's one of the things we inspect for and look for are field modifications. Did somebody add access control to this door? Did they punch a hole in the door frame and then there was a door sensor in there? Well, now you violated the integrity of the door frame. What are you doing? You have to use fire rated, parts to do that. So we see a lot of security systems where that door lock that you might have bought was designed properly, worked well, went through all of its testing, and then you install that. But then somebody else comes along, some integrator is installing an access control panel. And then we're going to run wires and we'll put an access control electronic door latch. Mm-hmm. Well, now you've taken away the strike plate that came with the door lock, and you're using a different type of strike mechanism, an electronic strike. And those two components were never tested together. So installation of disparate products that were never tested together, they will not perform the way they were designed to perform. We see that all the time because the world is a big, complicated place. I get it. Your door hardware parts guy is not the one manufacturing, your access control card technology system. And the card system, like NXP Semiconductor, is not out there making door latches.
Right.
So I understand the problems, but that's why we love it. We absolutely love it when we've had people in RTA classes that aren't penetration team members. We've had integrators and installers come to our classes, and it's opened their eyes like, oh my God, we do that all the time. Yeah, we've been undermining the security that the customers, the customers insisting we want these parts because they look good, and you don't want to. No, don't change out the other thing. That one, the nice satin finish. Keep that on the door, but then just change this part of the door. And now these guys come away from us like, man, I'm not going to do that anymore.
So,
and as far as what people do on a resident, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, so you're not like you're the example you gave was how it reduces its longevity in a fire setting, but you're also saying that when they come in and make a convenience change like an electric lock or an access panel or whatever, it also gives you easier ways to defeat those systems.
Oh yeah, because they're installing they're like, well, I did my job correctly, but you don't realize you've installed it in a manner that it wasn't designed to be installed in, or now it's trying to interact with a different system that you've never tested it on. So we'll say, oh wow, when you put those two great tastes, they don't taste great together because it's very vulnerable now that you bolted this onto that and it doesn't work the way you think it does.
Yeah.
I have, I guess, one more question before we go on to viewer questions, which I'd like to ask. Since Thief came out in 1981, what has made safe cracking more difficult? What has changed in this field in the last 40 years or so that is making, whether it's our intelligence service professionals or people like you helping out, the government decommission safes? What are the big changes that have occurred over the last few decades?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. It'll tie back into the previous. You had asked one question we almost might have missed. You said, "What can people do at home?" And it is the same answer as what has changed with safe cracking, and it's the same answer. That's a call all the way back to I was saying when we were younger, we had more free space to kind of play and roam. It's all electronic monitoring. Nowadays, you're not going to see beautiful, amazing graffiti on a subway car because kids in New York City in the 70s and 80s, I mean, they could sneak around in tunnels all night long, and there maybe would be one cop with a flashlight who might catch them. Nowadays, you try to go somewhere you don't belong in Manhattan's MTA, you're going to be caught in 5 seconds. There's going to be electronic there's cameras everywhere. Nowadays, what makes safe cracking hard, the idea of like there was a famous robbery. If I can find the article or any footage of it, there's literally like all the strong boxes are ripped out of this huge nest of safe deposit boxes inside of a vault I think it might have been in Brussels. It was a big financial and precious goods emporium. And these people had literally concrete cored through the wall. And they spent the whole weekend raiding this entire vault because there was no electronic monitoring. There were no cameras. There was no alarms down there because who would ever get in? Right. Nowadays, electronics have gotten so cheap. Just put electronic monitoring on everything. Now, I'm not saying you can't defeat it.
Right.
It's different. I mean, we have a whole intrusion detection defeats class at RTA, right?
Well, those gangs,
but if
those gangs are doing it now. The gangs are doing it now too with those portable man packs that they're getting off Temu or whatever. But anyway, but if
yes,
it's there,
monitoring your, like if I can go up to your safe over the weekend, if you're away on a fishing trip or something, and I can just spend all weekend in your house working on your safe, something's wrong.
Right.
Like, come on.
Right.
Use a half decent electronic home monitoring solution. Don't use some pile of poo like Simply Safe or something. Use something good. I like Ubiquity is a pretty good brand. I don't really like Nest and Ring very much. But I'm not going to get in bagging on or promoting any brands. I don't work for any of these companies. I don't have grudges of it. But using electronic monitoring and using it effectively, that's what makes everything so much harder.
Yeah.
Electronic intrusion detection.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Interesting.
So for people who might want to get into this field, right? Whether it's doing what you do, sort of more in the civilian market with, obviously government stuff, or if they want to be a black bag guy or gal, working for the, FBI or the CIA or, local PD or whatever. Where do they start? What does that career path look like? There's not a military MOS for it, so.
Right, that is true. That is true. Although we're so self. I hope you don't think I'm sounding self-serving. I mentioned
not at all.
our trainings in the past.
Yes.
We are inches away from, I believe, being what is called COOL program certified. The COOL, the COOL program is people who are, I think it's your last 6 months of service, or if you've recently exited uniform, there is budget available through the DoD for people who want to train for a new career.
That's fantastic.
So coming to us, or I think Lockmasters and Mark Bates, MBA USA, I think they might also be COOL program compliant. So if you're not in uniform, if you're just in the civilian land, that's fine. But it really is showing up and getting some base level of training, not only to know what the landscape is, but a lot of times, and I have a whole blog post about this, I'll throw you that link as well. People like to bag on training. The training doesn't prove you actually know how to do a thing. I've seen more people with a certification that they didn't know squat. That's true. I've known many people with college degrees that aren't working in the field that they got a degree in. Mm-hmm. But you know what a certification, like what training and ultimately getting a certification represents to a lot of employers? It represents that you can sit the F down and just complete something,
right? Which
Which is a very hard thing for a lot of people out there to do. Yes, a certification doesn't necessarily mean you're the best person at what the piece of paper says you can do, but it means you can see a task through to completion.
Right.
In our scatterbrained ADHD world, a lot of times employers today just want to know, are you a reliable person? Can you take a task and run with it and see it through? Mm-hmm. So I like to remind people of that when they say, man, is this certification going to actually help me out in my career? Yeah, it's much in the same way that you mentioned people in the service, right? A lot of times if an employer sees somebody, says, oh, this person is former Army, this person was Air Force, and they might give them, like, let's bring that resume to the top of the pile. It's not because the job they're going to do has anything to do with, liberating some foreign vil. It has to do with the fact this person knows how to keep their head straight in pressure. This person knows how to execute on tasks. This person can self-manage. So giving employers a shorthand way of evaluating, yeah, I'm not going to be a drag on your organization. I kind of can tie my own shoes and get myself to Friday without you having to babysit me. That's valuable to that's what a lot of companies want. They want to be able to quickly ascertain, are you a person that's going to bring value to my org?
Right. Right.
Dave, you got the Patreon questions?
Absolutely. And I apologize for those text rings. I had taken my phone off airplane mode so I could look at the Patreon.
I didn't hear them at all. It's all right.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Let me take my phone off.
You getting these live? Have we been live streaming this whole time? Or you got these
for the Patreon folks.
We live stream for Patreon.
There's probably 20 people watching.
We used to
do
this
man,
live.
I feel so bad that we were a little bit off kilter on getting the Zoom link working in the beginning.
No, that's more my fault than anything.
Okay, so Matt S., thank you very much. Really stoked to see Deviant Ollam on as a guest, huge in the pen testing community. Question for the guest: what is one tool that you see people include in their physical pen test kit that is overrated and should probably be left at home? And what is one tool you always bring with you on an engagement?
Ooh, I love the first question. I want to give more brain space to that because people buy so much stuff and keep adding it to their kit and adding it to their kit. And yeah, you see the person like, they have my daily pocket carry, then that becomes their sort of sling bag.
Right.
And then that becomes a backpack.
Right.
And before you know it, you're like, it's not even daily carry anymore. What are you freaking doing? You're carrying a freaking ruck bag. What would I say? You know what? I'm going to go. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to pull up briefly my own, I'm going to pull up Red Team Tools, which is my own catalog. and I'm going to look through my own catalog about something. I'm like, this is the last thing you should possibly purchase from us. Bump, okay, some of these are all right. It might be an electronic tool. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I will say it's a cool thing, but we have a couple of tools designed for pin pad hacking. There are people that say you can use thermal cameras to like look at a pin pad right after somebody's entered a pin to see where their fingers were touching. I made a kit of UV powder. So you dust the pin and you come back later with a UV light and you can see where the pin pad was touched. I know we sell them. Like I make these that's Hollywood shit, man. Come on. Like I'm not saying it has no purpose. And in fact, if you have an electronic safe, that's interesting because that's probably one code, or an alarm panel. That's probably one code that gets entered. But a door, an electronic keypad access door, where there's probably lots of people with different codes, that's not going to help. Come on. You're not going to get there. But yeah, I have used it on an electronic safe in an executive's office once because I was able to see which numbers they had touched, and I came back a week later. And I didn't actually open the safe. We weren't off, but I said, are these the digits of your combination? I didn't even tell him what the digits, the right order. He was freaked out that I actually knew it at all. But yeah, you don't need that shit. Buy that after you bought everything else, but don't carry it in your daily carry. And the tool that everyone should have on them at all times?
Yeah.
Two-part answer. The best two things available. Traveler hook, which is used for getting latches on doors, and what's called an under door tool. And they both have their pros and cons. I'll tell you, a traveler hook, I got my wallet right here. In my wallet is a small skeletonized version of a traveler hook. It doesn't have a big chunky handle. My buddy in Scotland makes these. He calls these the skeleton hook. But this is just, you saw, I just pulled it out of my wallet, and I'll get doors open with this all the time. The other one that's hard, I mean, the under door tool, if anyone out there has seen an under door tool, they're devastatingly effective. Not easy to carry around. They're big. Now, I happen to have an under door tool as well. It's in my belt because there's a whole video. It's a tiny video I talked about where I literally found a belt manufacturer that would do exactly what I wanted and make a belt with a long cavity in it. I tried money belts, but they weren't enough space. But yeah, we have under door tools that you can whip out of a belt. Is it as good as a big commercial under door tool? No. But if I could that's my gift to the world. I want to give everyone the ability to have an under door tool on them at all times if they want it. And I always travel with mine. Traveler hook and under door tool. Everybody needs them.
For people who might not know what those are, can you give us a real quick brief description of like what each does?
Yep. Sure. So the traveler hook, if anyone was watching the video part of this, it's a small tool with a tiny probe sticking off the end of it. It's a tiny right angle hook. If you want a really cheap version of them, you can grab some O-ring picks at your local Hazard Fart or Home Despot or something like that. Those are going to be cheaper steel, and they're going to be too thick. I think the shafts on those are too thick. That's why if you want to get a nice version, you get like a proper traveler hook from us or from Lockmaster sells them. I think Mark Bates sells them. But you reach into a door jamb and you can manipulate the latch on the door. If the latch is not dead latching correctly, which is a very perennial problem, you can slip many doors open with a traveler hook. An under door tool, as it sounds, it reaches beneath a door, but the idea is modern building code, ADA code, fire code, all these various codes require egress is always allowed. Free egress from a building should never be denied or impeded. So you can have all the locks and access control you want on the outside of a door. If someone's inside trying to leave, there's rules, there's laws and rules around this. It's single motion, a single pushing or twisting motion on a door handle. There's actually, for ADA reasons, a poundage of pressure, how many foot-pounds and inch-pounds of so forth of torque and push. So it's very light pressure on the inside of a door shall cause the door to unlock on the operable part. An under door tool is a long rod that reaches up under the door, swings back towards the door, and you yank down on a cord, and you're trying to hit the handle, the inside handle, but you yourself are on the outside of the door. And if you can trip that, what's called the operable part of the door, meaningfully it's a lever style handle, that will trigger the door to release. And if you have a long enough rod and a string on the end of it, and you know how to use it, you can pop open the vast majority of commercial doors in all the buildings that you travel through all the time.
Sounds much easier to use than a wire coat hanger undone with 550 cord tied around the top of it.
Yeah. I've seen people do it though. You make use of what you got. You improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other question was, thank you very much. One question for him: How has physical pen testing evolved in the age of ubiquitous technical surveillance, where the opportunity for traps backed by all kinds of sensors covering the entire spectrum are widely available and easy to disguise? As a defender, I actually have the impression that it wouldn't be overly difficult to design a room designed to hold secrets that would be a nightmare to try to approach covertly. Is that notion particularly off base in your opinion experience? And I'm also just curious to hear your opinion on how traps have evolved from the days of analog only solutions like matchstick in the doorway, a piece of hair on the, resting somewhere.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And in fact, if you go to these major trade shows nowadays, for example, Millipol, the Military and Police Expo is one. ISC, the ISC trade show, the security controls trade shows, ISC West and ISC East. We're always out, ISC West out here in Vegas, we're always out at ISC. You'll see loads of vendors. Now, AI is a hot topic, so they're shoving AI into everything.
Sure.
But the idea is if you put enough camera coverage, just visual camera coverage in a space, we are just about at the point where you can, in theory, give us a technological solution, a list of people who belong in the building. Now, you're giving away a lot of your biometric data to an employer, possibly a third party that the employer has hired. So take that as you will. And if there's a lot of cost in installing all this, and there's probably a subscription plan involved. But there are schools now, and I don't know how I feel about this with kids and all of our kids' biometric data being saved by some firm that doesn't have their best interest at heart, probably. But there are schools where if anybody shows up in the school and they're not in like the FACE database, it throws an alert on a screen. And the resource officer or some teacher gets sent down that hallway and it's like, hi, what are you doing here? Are you here to pick somebody up? How did you get in? It is absolutely a huge challenge, but that's only as good as the systems that are employing it. We've seen that AI can hallucinate. We've seen that I remember there were early days of facial recognition. Somebody, basically there was a man with a beard and he wore long like shoulder duster earrings. So the fact that he was very mask presenting, he had masculine facial features, but he was wearing accessories that were very femme coded. The system completely didn't know what to make of it. It broke on like the first line of code, couldn't classify him by gender, and like the system just failed. So you're probably going to continue to see oddities and edge cases like that, which brings us back to the importance of testing. All these vendors out there should be engaging the hacker community and the researcher community and inviting them to test these systems, because it just takes one person to say, what if I wear my hat and I put a really, really freaking bright IR LED under the brim of the hat? And people did that to defeat facial recognition for years.
Yeah.
You're walking along the street and it just, your naked eye just sees a person, but all the cameras just saw a huge white blob it was just blew out the levels of the camera. The automatic gain control of the camera didn't work.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
I got a couple others here. Alex asks, how did you get to know Carl and the In-Range crew?
Hell yeah. I just saw Carl. I was just at High Desert Brutality. I just flew back from Idaho right like yesterday. So Carl Casarda, amazing person, wonderful human, smart guy. He is not just a firearms person. He came from the hacker world. He was in the tech world. He was a sysadmin and a network guy for years. That's how he made his bones. He was around, he'll tell stories back when Operation Sun Devil was a big hacker crackdown, and he witnessed all of that go down, and he remembers running and securing systems at the time. So Carl was aware of DEF CON, and he had heard of this thing that I ran with firearms for years. I ran what was called the DEF CON Shoot. Still exists. Other people run it now. I've turned it over to them after a decade. And he and a former colleague of his, they came out to the DEF CON shoot just to see what it was about. They said, hey, it's in Vegas. We're in Arizona. Let's just drive up. And he and I met at DEF CON. And I instantly said, oh, you're a cool guy. You're into this stuff. I'm into what you're into. Let's keep talking. And we just kept coming to each other's events ever since then. He's come back to DEF CON several times. I've gone to his firearms events. Again, show notes, click down below. I'm sure you'll drop a link to In Range TV. It's one of the very, very few people in the firearms space that is not monetized, and they're not doing a lot of corporate shilling. Most influencers in the gun world, there's a lot of money and pay for play reviews going on. And Carl's out there just in his own backyard in Arizona doing mud tests with a bucket of water in the Arizona sand and saying, yep, this gun failed. Sorry, don't know what to tell you. Manufacturer sent it to me. I'm sending it to, they'll make a change. They'll send me another one. So he's a very honest, very upstanding guy. And yeah, we've been friends forever. I visit him at his place. We travel places together. He's one of my favorite people.
One last one from M. Corbin. He asks, what is your favorite fiction author?
Favorite fictional author? The easy answer would possibly be Douglas Adams.
Writer of fiction, not actual fictional author.
Right. Yes. Douglas Adams is going to be up there. I find that the Hitchhiker's Guide series and the lesser known works, the Dirk Gently's Detective Agency and such, the Douglas Adams books, they have this wonderful lightheartedness to them, a spirit of adventure and positivity that's just full of warmth. The world is a lesser place without Douglas Adams around. My wife would mention, things like Pratchett and other sci-fi authors that she's a much bigger fan of and tries to get me involved. I tried to watch Dune recently. I tried to, I've watched The Lord of the Rings with her. I understand Tolkien's amazing world building, but there's something about the lightheartedness and the smile that I will reread Adams's work to this day. Yeah. I used to really love Richard Morgan, the British author, Richard Morgan, British author. Richard Morgan wrote the Altered Carbon series.
Yeah.
Not the most progressive views on some issues that are very dear to people in my life. I have a trans daughter, so don't promote Richard Morgan as much anymore. I think Douglas Adams would have been fine with her though. So yeah, Douglas Adams gets my vote.
Yeah.
And last thing, I guess, Deviant. Unless Dave, do you have anything before we let Deviant plug his company and website?
Not at all. Would just like to remind you, Deviant, like when we say we're out, if you don't mind hanging out, and if you're watching this recorded, you could be watching this live if you're a Patreon subscriber, and we're gonna do a Team House After Dark, just a fun little story or whatever for our Patreon subscribers afterwards. But please go ahead, Jack.
So, Deviant, tell people out there where they can go to procure your services if they want you to break into their home, place of employment, bust open a safe. Tell them about the classes that you offer and where they can find you guys.
Sure. So yes, on the internet, I am Deviant Ollam, spelled not at all like it sounds. So yeah, you'll see my name in the episode, but I'm on all of the things as my username. So YouTube, but I'm not on Twitter. No one's on Twitter anymore, but Blue Sky, Mastodon, Instagram, Reddit. I have a GitHub. But the professional side of things, my one company is called The Core Group. So Bobak and I have been running The Core Group since 2010. We're at thecoregroup.net. That's if you want us to break in. If you want to learn how to break in, it's going to be Red Team Alliance. So redteamalliance.com. I'm literally sitting, the reason I'm in such a bare, weird white box, we got the keys yesterday morning to our new building in Vegas. We're all out here moving in. So all the teams downstairs, the moving trucks have been rolling all day. Hopefully you haven't heard the garage doors rolling up and down outside. So redteamalliance.com. Our full training calendar is online. We have our Vegas facility. We have our facility in Virginia near DC. We have classes in Australia and Europe as well. If you want to buy stuff, I never like mentioning our retail catalog. I feel like such a shill. It's not I wouldn't say it on my channels on social media, but Red Team Tools, all the equipment and gear that I make and design and have changed over the years. Here's a fun one. This was a product that literally existed and no longer does. And I bring things back from the dead. So we have these kind of in people's kits in the field. You just pop them out. This is a fence climber. You stick it through a fence, you drop it and it hangs, and you can go up one side, down the other. You get a couple of these in your pocket, and 8
nice.
foot, 12 foot, you name however high the fences are, you're up and over in no time, even my fat ass. So that's all on redteamtools.com.
You always
But
need
yeah, the
somebody
core
like,
group and Red Team Alliance are the most useful.
fantastic. I was going to say that you always need somebody like Jack to go over first, though, to lay down on the concertina at the top. So then you go up, climb over them.
Even privates in the
Absolutely.
Army have a use.
It's even harder to do all that nowadays. I mean, we have friends at Magnosphere who the fence sensor technology, the shake sensors are getting really subtle. And I did an experiment where I said, I wonder if it would detect going over the fence. I bet it will. And the guy was like, it's going to detect you putting it on the fence. And sure enough, yeah, you can watch the little line go up on their graph. He's like, yeah, just touching the fence was enough. You're not getting over that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, so definitely check out Deviant's, the classes, the company, and the videos, like everything on YouTube is just fantastic. So I highly recommend people track you down and watch all of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. A lot of, I mean, my channel now I've been on YouTube since 2009. There's a lot of crap on there, but I find a lot of people like the long form stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my lectures, when I've actually given presentations,
Yeah.
there's maybe a dozen or more hour-long videos on my channel. That's all my professional talks.
And I think it's a lot of fun. You talked in the beginning about, kids not having the space anymore. And like, I remember when I was maybe like in junior high, like breaking into a school over the summer, like going in through the top, and we weren't destroying anything. We weren't stealing anything. It was just the thrill of being able to get in, right? And you're in, and like, you're in.
Yeah.
And you still, like a lot of your videos, you still have that thrill of discovery, like when you're presented with a new challenge, a new technology, a new type of door sensor, like because it has to open from one side and put in gas or blowing up a balloon or whatever on the other side of the door. Like there's still a lot of that, I don't know, like that sense, that childlike sense of exploration. Like, oh, here's a new puzzle, let's solve it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we will see all of you next time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Deviant. And you can find all the links down in the description that we mentioned on the show. And for our Patreon subscribers, stick around because there's a little bit more.
It's going to get spicy.
All right, I'm going to leave it running. D can cut the film.
Oh, right, because
we can roll right
That's
into
right,
it.
that's right. Because we're not live for anybody but Patreon. Do you have? I know I kind of put you on the spot, to you, but we're still rolling. We're still live to the Patreon. But do you have something in mind? A story or a vignette or anything?
Oh, a story from my end?
Yeah. So and like I said, it can be, it could be something that a time it went bad, a time it went really good, a time something weird happened.
Yeah, weirdest thing.
I mean, there's a
happened
story
during
I've
red
told
teaming.
once or twice, but one of my favorite jobs was a job we completely had no success, and it was a small company in the middle of America. It was a middle America, nowheresville, and some people say, oh, these podunk town, you're gonna put one over on those rubes. I mean, no one really says something that rude, but there's a certain kind of thinking that says, well, small companies, these people, they're not going to have sophisticated security systems. And they didn't have a lot of big budget. They didn't have all the whiz bang stuff that you see at the trade shows. What they had was a dedicated team of staff, many of whom had worked there for decades. And they just cared. They had emotional investment in what they were doing. It was an agribusiness, essentially. So they were American food supply, right? Like I would consider it critical to our nation's health and well-being. I was very hopeful that their security would be robust, but it was in a way I wasn't expecting. We came out there, cased the joint, did all our usual recon, had our cover stories. We said, all right, let's find the local utility companies in town. We made badges, outfits, you name it, in case we were on site getting questioned. So we were, because being a utility company worker, you can kind of be on the buildings around the grounds, and no one would, oh, that guy's he's checking out, he's, you're spray painting some marks in the ground a little bit. So we did all this research. We found a few doors that were a little bit ajar, and we had some idea. All right, we come up with an attack chain. We're going to come in on Sunday morning. Everyone's at church or watching football. We were on site, walking around the premises, and again, looking like technicians, right? We were in this building. There was a multi-building complex. I remember we were in a building for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes tops. And somebody said on our team, say, hey, there's a car in the parking lot that wasn't there earlier. We look out, sure enough, yeah, there's a car. What's that? And we later said, do you see, who's that guy? Looking at it, there's a guy going from building to, clearly going building to building. Not a security guard, just a dude whose badge worked. We said, that's freaking weird. And later he came and found it. He found us in one of the buildings, in one of the offices. And he said, hey, what are you guys doing in here? Again, so we're from such and such telecom. We were sent here. We did some work at your Wyoming office. He said, we're here at the Kentucky office now. I said, no, I would have heard about that. Who sent you from Wyoming? We knew Nate. We said, oh, well, Keith is the plant manager over there. He does the IT infrastructure. No, I don't know if Keith would. I could call Keith and find out. This guy was having none of it. And eventually we had to produce, you're always carrying a letter that says, look, we were hired by this guy. The CEO knows we're here. The owner knows we're here. And he's like, yeah, there was an odor to this situation. I didn't like it. We said, well, are you working today, sir? He said, no, I was driving through town. He was literally driving down Main Street. And he looked at the parking lot, and just driving by the buildings, he saw one of our team in the parking lot. And he said, I don't recognize that guy. He did a K-turn, came back up Main Street, and he said, then saw your guy badge into a building. And I said, I don't like this. I said, wait a minute, you saw on your freaking day off a person badge in with a working badge, and you still didn't. He's like, no, I didn't like it. Just something didn't like it. Something didn't feel right. I know companies where you could walk in and say, hi, I'm here to steal everything. And the employees would say, yeah, F this company. They don't care about me anyway.
Right,
like,
right.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They give a crap. But this guy, I mean, he had been working there for probably 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
He knew the owners. They went bowling, and so he's like, no, he just had emotional investment, as did everyone at this company. We were on our walkthrough the day after. We were on Monday, escorted around, and at one point, our escort, the co-owner of the company, his son, he left us alone to get something, and a woman was like, "What are you doing in this wing of the building?" We said, "Oh, Frank is letting us in." She's like, "Frank's not here. Where's Frank? You don't belong here. Come to the front with me right now." And she had just been working there for, she had been at the same desk for the same many decades. There's a real lesson there. And investing in your people, I don't just mean give pizza Fridays.
Right.
I mean, actually give real raises, take a real interest. Are people satisfied with their job? Do they care about what you're doing? That's what saved this company from everything we tried to do to them.
I want to ask, I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to ask either for a time you were horrified by how easy something important was that shouldn't have been easy, or about the biggest ass chewing you ever saw because something was easy.
I was really sad to learn of, this was a biomedical research facility, and ultimately they had spent a ton, they had money coming out their ears, right? They had spent so much money on all their security systems, but they didn't invest in a decent badge credential technology. They were still using the most outdated HID procs credentials, which have been around, 30 years at this point, more than that, 40 years probably at this point, the original HID procs. And it's the most clonable badge imaginable. It was hard to clone badges. We couldn't really get to the employees. They weren't around. It was a very buttoned up, very tight building. But one of our team went in and interacted with the guards in the front lobby. And he was just BSing with them. And we talk about this in training. We had a long range reader in a laptop bag. And if you got close enough to someone's badge, you could grab it. Because there's no encryption on the badges. You just had to brush past the badge. And he was able to get past one of the guards. And there's a longer version of the story that I've told us. But eventually he gets near a guard, gets the guy's badge. And then we just cloned it instantly. We just got in, and then we came in the next night, midnight shift. There was a big movie premiere. It was like the new Star Wars that was coming out, like the episode Phantom Menace or whatever was coming out. A long time ago story. But we were able to use these. We just got in everywhere at that point. And the lesson we later learned, and again, it goes to how it's not always your fault. It's not always you can control the badges. So this building that they were renting was owned by a huge property management company. And they insisted, like, here's the badges for the building. This is the badge system.
Right.
Now, they had other badges they could have used, but the property management company made it such a pain in the ass. They just said, no, we're just going to go with the badges. Fine. We're not going to go through all the legal hoops and give you copies of badges. So they were locked in by some weird rental agreement. But the sad part is that all that entire guard crew, I won't say got fired. They still had jobs, but they lost that contract. Like the guards were all cycled out. And that was part of the executives. I can't believe the guards let you get close to that. I said, come on, man. Who's going to think that somebody,
Right.
We had a guy who knew how to talk. I said, if you had kept those guards, that would be trial by fire for them. They would be way more hardened against this kind of attack, and they'd be way more poised
Right.
to say, hey, I'm not going to keep my badge right in front of me while it's visible. And, I think it was the wrong move. I think they should, you want the person who got caught in a stumble if they're willing to learn from it and recover and get better.
Especially if they didn't even know that technology existed. Like they're security guards, right? They're not like
Yeah.
FBI. They're not FBI. It's
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. Deviant, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we
thank
we appreciate
Hell
you
yeah.
being with us tonight. It's a great time.
Hey guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, KIT, Kilo India Tango.com /join.